YouTubers, I want to welcome you to another edition of Bargain Bin Gear. And along the lines of Bargain Bin Gear, I had been looking around online to see if I could find a small tube amp. Something along the lines of a PB Classic 30, that kind of thing. Well, I was shocked by the prices, and on top of that, the shipping costs, and on top of that, the tax, right? Making it a quite expensive proposition. And I was looking on, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, eBay, Reverb, on and on and on, Guitar Center. And, well, one of them that caught my interest, I don't know if it was from a YouTube review or something. Anyway, but one of them was this kind of sleeper Fender tube amp that I thought was kind of neat. It was kind of overlooked. And yet they're really great amps. I mean, they sound really good and those kind of things. And I'm talking about the Fender Bass Breaker, right? Kind of a weird name. Well, now wait, is it a bass amp? Bass Breaker, right? But no, it's a guitar amplifier, and basically it's kind of a modernized version of something like a Blues Junior, which has been around, and I hate that name, by the way. The Blues Junior. I don't want to play an amp that's a junior anything. So anyway, the Fender Bass Breaker, right? And has a different look to it and things, but it's very, very nice. Anyway, and one in particular was the Bass Breaker 15, right? 15 watt tube amp. Very similar to me to like a Super Champ X2, right? Which is one of my favorite small amps like that. However, the Fender Bass Breaker 15 was a true tube amp, Anyway, and because they're not all that popular, they're kind of sleeper Fender amps, well, you can find them kind of inexpensively. So anyway, I went around looking locally, and just to see what was available, if anything, when I went into a pawn shop, right, and I had bought a deluxe reverb there, if you can believe it. And I'm glad I did, because since that time the deluxe reverb price has just shot up through the roof. To what, $1,800 or $1,600, something like that. Whereas I bought mine from the pawn shop for under $1,000. So at the time it was a good deal. In any case, I was walking through and, they had their PV Vipers and Line 6 amps. I just wasn't interested in those. But as I'm walking along, I notice, well, damn, look at this. A bass breaker, right, 15 amplifier, and an extension cabinet, right? The BB112, I believe it is, right? And man, it looked nice, I'll tell you what. So, didn't think much of it at the time. But the more I thought about it, I thought, man, maybe I could get a good deal on this. I don't know. So, well, I got it. I wasn't expecting to walk out of there with an amplifier and cabinet, especially not the Fender bass breaker, which has just happened to be the amp that I was looking at online, though for much more money, about twice as much, really. So I got it home, and we can take a look at it here. Alright, now let's take a look at this Fender bass breaker. The bottom portion is the extension cabinet, and the cover is the amp, so let me remove the cover. And there is the amp, who makes kind of like a stack kind of deal, right? Pretty cool. And take a look here. There's the amp, the bass breaker 15. Okay. Power, mute, which is kind of a standby. And then the LED jewel. And then reverb, master, treble, middle, bass, structure, which is low, medium, and high, kind of gain stages, and then gain, and a bright switch. So there we go. And the amp part of it has some weight to it. So let's take a listen first to the amp section, and then we'll bring in the extension cabinet. Now, one thing I should mention is that it was in such good condition too, excellent condition. I mean, and then I realized why. Well, it came with a cover. Remember, we had just done a video on covers. So the amp had a cover, and it turns out I had a cover for the extension cabinet, which did not have a cover. And it came with the manuals for both, and then the speaker cable to hook up the amp to the extension cabinet. Okay, now, when it comes to the extension cabinet, the speaker in the bass breaker 15 is 8 ohm. Okay, and with tube amps you want to make sure you have, a speaker hooked up, or else it'll damage the amplifier. So I had an 8 ohm speaker, and I was kind of nervous about hooking up the extension speaker just because of the ohms. I mean, as it turns out, you're running the extension cabinet in parallel. Okay? So the speaker and the amplifier still works, but on the amplifier in the back it has an extension speaker, right? Or a main speaker. The main speaker would cut out the internal speaker altogether. But the parallel out, right, means that the amplifier speaker is still working, but in addition you're also running the extension cabinet speaker in parallel. And that changed the ohms of the setting, and luckily on this amplifier there's a 4 ohm, 8 ohm, and 16 ohm setting, right? So in other words, when you're just playing the amp with no extension cabinet, you want to set it to 8 ohm. But I discovered in parallel, 2 8 ohm speakers in parallel gives you an ohms rating of 4 ohms. And you have to make that switch setting on the amplifier to 4 ohm when you're using both. Right? And before we get into the demonstrations, I can tell you this right now. On its own, just the amplifier, right, it's not all that loud, really. You know, it's a 15 watt tube amp. However, when you hook up the extension cabinet, it's like, wow. All of a sudden it becomes as big a sound as some of my bigger amps, like the PV Classic 30, Bugera V22, Deluxe Reverb, in that range, as opposed to the smaller 15 watt amp that it is. And a lot of that has to do with this extension cabinet, you know. I'm not sure what speaker is in there, but I'll tell you what, one thing, it's very light. The amp is quite heavy, actually, but the extension cabinet is super light. You know, almost like they put a Neo speaker in there. You know, it's just, yeah, I was really surprised. But, light in a, you know, still feels solid. It doesn't feel cheap at all. So, I was really blown away with the cabinet. It makes a huge difference as far as sound goes. So really, you know, you would think that when you're home, you know, you just want to play at home or what have you, that you just use the amp. And then if you needed a bigger sound to play with a drummer or something, using that extension cabinet. Makes all the difference in the world, you know. And to be quite frank, here's my thoughts on the extension cabinet. Well, I was thinking, well, I don't need an extension cabinet. I'll just sell the extension cabinet, right, to help pay for the amplifier. And then you get it for much less, you know, basically half the price, really. However, after playing it, I thought, maybe not, because the extension speaker makes such a difference. And we'll hear it here in a second, that it would be a shame to separate them. Right? Yeah, I did not expect it to make that huge of a difference, but it does. Alright, so first off, let's take a listen to the Fender Bass Breaker 15, right? just on its own. And it really is a single channel amp, by the way, but it has this structure knob, which if you ask me are kind of gain settings. And you have low, medium, and high. Low is kind of the clean sound. Medium is kind of this crunch sound. And high, I guess, would be the distorted sound, you know. And we'll go through that as well. And one strange thing is, it has a standby switch. And when you first turn it on with the standby switch on, the jewel light that tells you the amp is on and so on blinks, flashes if you like, on and off, on and off. When you turn that standby off, then it becomes solid, which I thought was kind of neat. I haven't seen that in an amp before. By the way, it also has a direct out on there with an XLR jack on the back, which is quite interesting, and it has an effects loop, which the Blues Junior does not, you know. So they did try to incorporate new features, if you like, modern features. Alright, so let's take a listen to it. I'm really impressed, actually. So it definitely has that tube sound to it. And it kind of has that almost gritty sound in a way, but it's still very clean. Okay, and for right now I have a, where's the volume at? I have the volume turned all the way up, but I have the gain set really low to like 2.5. Now here's something I want to show you. This is the low structure, really clean sound, but it has some trick subsets. Alright, now here I've got it the same settings, except the structure goes from low to medium, which is kind of a crunch sound. But I have the gain very low. Already it's more noisy, I can tell that. But also it's much louder too. I mean, take a listen to this. It's kind of a... Yeah, so it really is kind of a crunchy sound. Now this is on the neck pickup. If I had it on the bridge, it'd probably be... But clean, it can still be clean. Yeah, so kind of almost overdriven. And we'll try just for fun the high setting. Alright, now there's definitely, you can hear it's really noisy, and I have no idea what this will give you. So it's kind of this overdriven sound that I don't like, personally. My guess is I would use the low setting is the one I really like. Gives you a really nice sound. Hope you're subscribing and watching the videos. The last video I did, I changed out a speaker in a Bulgarian amp with a C-Rex, Cannabis Rex speaker. Here, to Fender's credit, I don't feel a need to change the speaker. I think the speaker is fine. You know, it doesn't flub out or anything. It's actually very decent. So that's a real plus there. You know, because even the little Fender Super Champ X2 has such a cruddy speaker in it. I mean, it was junk. You know, and by the way, I put Cannabis Rex in the X2's little amps. But here, the speaker is very good. just awesome. Very nice sound. Now, it's got more tricks up its sleeve. And this has to do with the extension cabinet. And I mean, I've played amps and hooked up a cabinet, an extension cabinet. However, in my case, I would run them in series mostly. In other words, you would plug in a cabinet, but it would turn off the internal speaker. Here, with the Fender bass breaker, it has two options. It has a main speaker jack, which you would use, and that would turn off the internal speaker. But there's another jack, and this is where the magic happens. The parallel jack. In other words, the speaker, internal speaker, right, is still working in addition to the external cabinet speaker. It results in a really big sound. I was quite impressed. And I'll show it to you here now. Alright, now here's the Fender Bass Breaker 15 with the BB 112 extension cabinet. And because it's running in parallel mode, I had to switch the impedance from 8 ohm to 4 ohm. And so here it is. And take a listen to it, it's really huge. You're running a 2x12 basically, and I'm telling you, the sound is, man, impressive. Just the how big it is. I think that's really nice sound. I mean, just adding a little bit of reverb and using some of the reverb from the amp. And this is pedals just straight into the amp, not using the effects loop at all. And here's a different reverb. I could add a delay. There's the Bass Breaker 15 with the extension cabinet, and I have to say, I did not expect that big a change. When you hook up the extension cabinet, which is very light, by the way, that's another thing. I mean, I didn't think it'd make much difference at all, especially when I carried it. It was like, man, this thing's light. Whereas the amp has some real weight to it, but the extension cabinet has very little. So I didn't expect a big change, but there you go. You can hear the difference. Hopefully it comes through in the camera, but the sound becomes big, huge. Alright, now, here's my dilemma. Very first off, I was thinking, well, I'll just sell off the extension cabinet and keep the amp. That was one option. But now that I've heard the amp and the extension cabinet together, that may be a very bad idea. Because the two together, I don't know what happens, but somehow you get this huge sound. Okay, so another option is to keep both. Or three, which was my initial thought, was just to sell it off. Right? However, I'm really liking it. I really like it. So I may just hold on to it, you know. It's just a good sounding amp, you know. There's nothing more to it. However, I have to say, it sounds a little bit bigger, even without the extension cabinet, than my little Fender X2s, which I like a lot. So I don't know. I'm on the fence here. Tell me your thoughts. Should I keep it? Should I sell it? Should I sell just the extension cabinet? Or just keep them both? Because don't forget I have covers for these. Because it came with a cover with the amp, but the cabinet didn't have one. However, I was rummaging through stuff that I have, and guess what? I think I found one. It's a Fender cover that may fit this extension cabinet perfectly. I don't know. It's a hard decision to make, but I'm really quite impressed with the sound, I have to say. Just a really nice sound. And it's clean with a little tiny bit of grit to it, but still very clean, which is the sound that I kind of like, you know. And boy, do they look nice too. Have to admit, really cool. Alright, so there you go. That's the Fender Bass Breaker 15, often overlooked. I don't know why that is, except for possibly marketing was a little confusing to people. But what a great amp, man. Very nice. Alright, very good. I'll see you next time. Okay.